Lori. So once again, Mike Dawkins from World Cast Anglers here. We have our final spring webinar tonight. Heather Hodson from United Women on the Fly is here joining us, going through her journeys of fishing in Alaska and the last frontier. It's an awesome presentation. We couldn't be more thankful for Heather to dedicate her time and join us tonight to educate everyone on the things that she's doing with United on the Fly, as well as a lot of her fishing experience and things in the last frontier of Alaska. So once again, Heather, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this. You're an inspiration to all of us. For all of you attendees that don't know Heather, she has a full-time job, not in the fly fishing industry, and then does all of this, extracurricular stuff out of passion, as well as just interest in sharing her passion and learning techniques with other people in the fly fishing industry. So you're a huge inspiration to all of us. So thanks for doing that, and thanks for joining us. So
Thanks.
I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. All right. And then you're going to do how will the Q&A work? Do you want me to kind of stop after speech, or you just let me know, I guess. You just stop me and tell me. So
totally.
Okay.
We'll do that. I have the chat closed for everyone. So maybe when we start a Q&A, we'll discuss it and I'll open the chat or use the Q&A function. And for those attendees that are watching right now, if you have to leave or something like that, no worries. I'll follow up with everyone in the next couple days with a recording of the webinar that you can watch again or share with your friends, as well as follow up with you with our special promos for this webinar, which are free pair of Sims wading boots with any Sims wader purchase, as well as 20% off of any women's Sims sporting wear pieces. Heather is a Sims ambassador, so she knows the products and the brand quite well, and they are a great supporter of World Cast Anglers. So if you're interested in those, we can follow up with that email as well.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Can you see, are you at the slide that says disclaimer, Michael?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to go through my intro, but first and foremost, just like Michael said, this will be recorded. So my disclaimer is that I have a lot to say, and I like to talk, and sometimes I go off on tangents, or I get super nerdy on grain weights or things. So Michael's going to stop me and be like, okay, nerd alert, stop, if I'm going too into detail. So like Michael said, yes, I do have a full-time job. I'm actually a critical care nurse. So I've been a nurse for 16 years, and that's my real job. And it's, as you can imagine, has been interesting just with COVID lately. I started United Women on the Fly, and basically what it is it's just a way that anglers are united. So not United States, obviously it has women in the name, but we're just supportive and inclusive to everybody. And it's been really fun. It's my passion project. Well, last year I had 130 days on the water, and this year's been a little less than that, as most of you guys know. I'm definitely a sucker for spay fishing or using a two-handed rod, and I'm going to go into that a little bit more. And a lot of people feel that it's intimidating, and it's not. And Alaska, for instance, is one of the best places to learn and be successful with spay fishing. Love saltwater. Streams, I'm a trout girl. I go to Alaska because I love big fish, but I love trout, and they're absolutely amazing up there. I get a little nerdy with my casting, so I am studying for my CI. So I'll talk a little bit about just some casting stuff while we go through the presentation. And the fish gods are really good to me. And also the fish gods, I think sometimes are really good to women. And so you're going to see a lot of lady anglers, women anglers in this presentation. So it's pretty cool to just, just see that. One of my evolutions within fly fishing is to keep fish. Hold on. Okay, I'll slow down a little bit. Okay. So, um, are you guys on the keep fish wet? Probably. Sorry, guys. There's a little delay.
Yeah, we see
Okay.
keep fish wet.
Okay, cool. So one of my kind of evolutions, you know, as fly anglers, we all have our evolution, right? Where you evolve to be where you want to catch a fish, and then you want to catch the biggest fish, and then you want to catch the most fish. Well, one of my evolutions is keeping fish wet and being just taking care of the fish and properly handling them. So I'm a huge advocate for that. And you'll see some really cool photos of fish in the water, dripping, you know, slightly above the water. Just so that's just one of my things. And I have my catch of a lifetime is sitting in the truck here with me right now, and his name's Eric, and he's also an angler. And you know, he likes to take a lot of river naps, so I like to take some selfies of me picking his nose and that sort of thing. We have a good time, we have a lot of fun, and really truly that's what it's all about. Alaska roots. So, you know, with Alaska, I was actually born in Anchorage. So my dad is the one with the blue shirt on, and he is, and my uncle in the middle. So my uncle Bud Hodson owns Tick Chick Narrows Lodge, and he's owned that for about 31 years now, I believe. And he's a second owner for that. It's a fly out fly fishing lodge, and they actually were caretakers for the lodge prior to my uncle owning it. So I definitely have some Alaska roots, and I try to go back as often as I can. I'll spend anywhere from like 2 weeks to a month in Alaska, partly because, you know, I love it there. I love the fishing. I love everybody. Okay, cool. So let's kind of get into the meat of Alaska here. A couple of interesting facts for you guys. Did you guys know that Alaska actually makes up a fifth of the United States total land? So there's 580,000 square miles in Alaska. It's a very large state, obviously. Of that, population is less than 1 million. So 731,000 people are populated in Alaska. And 17 of the 20 top peaks are actually in Alaska. So some interesting stuff. Denali or Mount McKinley. So it's the largest, tallest peak, and it's 20,000 feet, 320 feet. So pretty big. Within Alaska, there are 5 different regions, and I kind of wanted to do a little background of Alaska because we fish a lot of these different areas, and so I'm going to go into each specific area and region, and then I'll start to talk about all of the fishing. Now, the one thing I will say, of those 730,000 people that are populated within Alaska, there's 120,000 of that population is actually native. And so these are the different indigenous tribes that are in Alaska. So I think it's pretty important to know that 18% of Alaska's population are either American Indian or Alaska Native. So think about this. If you go to Mexico and you go to Applebee's, right? So you are not immersing yourself in the culture. And I think that it's a really important piece of Alaska is to kind of, you know, do some research and look at the different tribes that are within those regions that you're visiting. These are some pretty awesome, cute little kids that I met in Quinnahock, which is in southwestern Alaska, on my way to the Connectoc. And speaking of Southwest Alaska, so this is going to be kind of a lot of the area that I'll be talking about today. So it's going to be Dillingham, King Salmon. I'm sure some of you guys have heard about Bristol Bay. That's a pretty big area that people go and fish. And then also Quinnahock, which is the Connectoc, or also the Chosen River. The great thing about Southwest is also it's the Aleutian Islands. And so I'm sure you've seen some of these names before. Now, this is, I have a couple of conservation things, you know, the no pebble mine. I'm not going to get into detail about that, but I will post some stuff later on social media. But I want you to if you have any questions or follow up with it, kind of right now is a big time within the next 3 months about trying to see if this is actually going to happen or not. We've been fighting it for well over the last 10, 15 years. So the far north, you know, I've actually never fished this area, but this is going to be like Barrow, where you think about like the polar bears. Nome is here. So an interesting fact about Nome is that it has the longest day and also the shortest day. So in very minimal roads here in the far north. Interior. So this is a pretty amazing place. So Fairbanks, an interesting fact about Fairbanks is that you can see the northern lights 243 days out of the year, which is pretty awesome. Mount McKinley is here. So there's a lot of DIY opportunities here in the interior. So you can go into Denali National Park and you can go and do some DIY stuff. And this is just a picture of the going into Denali. And no cars are allowed into Denali. My dad and I actually took a bus ride just as tourists, and we went back, and it's like a good 15-hour day, but absolutely worth it. We saw lynx, we saw caribou, we saw mama and baby cubs. Like, oh, it was awesome. And you know, the great thing about Alaska, this is not fishing related, obviously, but man, there's so much to see and do. So take advantage of it. This is one of the glaciers that we just went and hiked up. We did a tour with it, but you can go and explore. So South Central, this is probably the region that most people are familiar with. You have Anchorage, obviously, Talkeetna, for anybody that hasn't been there, it's amazing. And then there's the Kenai. So the Kenai Peninsula, you have lots of tributaries into there. It's a great use some DIY. You can do some inexpensive-ish fishing and getting, you know, there's so many guides on the Kenai. And then Homer, obviously you have to go to the spit, you got to go drink a beer at Salty Dog, just be a cheesy tourist. It's important, it's a part of that whole adventure. And this is just the photo of the Salty Dog Saloon and then end of the park or end of the road park, so that actually the road stops here. So Homer's really cool. Southeast Alaska. So this is our fifth and final region of Alaska that I'm going to talk about. So Juneau is the capital of Alaska. A lot of people may think that it's actually Anchorage, but no, it's Juneau. It was founded during the gold rush. And then this is kind of interesting. Sitka was originally the capital of Russia, America. And Ketchikan has the world's largest collection of totem poles, just FYI. I spent some time in this part in Southeast Alaska. I went to Yakutat, pretty small area, but it actually has ice. It's Icy Bay, so we were fishing in Icy Bay, and I was drinking an Icy Bay IPA, so I thought it was pretty cool. The one thing about the southeastern region is that there is the Tongass National Forest. So it's 16.8 million acres of rainforest. And so again, I'm not going to go into all of this, but just there's a website for you to look at and just kind of to, you know, see what's happening to some of this, the environmental aspects of Alaska. All right, so now let's get into start to talk about fishing and some traveling and whatnot. Now there's some Alaska travel must-haves. I don't know what the actual national bird of Alaska is, but I'm pretty sure it's a mosquito. Or no, so you want to have some sort of bug protection, whether it's actual like the whole, you know, mosquito bug nets. You want to make sure though that they are small enough that they're not, that no-see-ums can't get into them. And then also utilizing materials or the new technology that has a bug stopper material. as Michael mentioned, I am a Sims ambassador, and so Sims has actually done a really good job with some of the women or bug stopper material and bug stopper products. So this red shirt is one of the new women's bug stopper hoodies, and it's actually has permethrin. It's impregnated with permethrin. And what that means is that it's actually, this sounds crazy, but it's a derivative of a chrysanthemum. Say that 3 times too fast. And the great thing about bug stopper is that those material, it does work. Like I've actually watched the bugs just kind of hover over and not actually land on my shirt or on me. And you can have, they say 70 washes. I've had more on my shirts with that. So it's a really, really good investment. It also is UV, it's also cooling. So I'll use that as a layering piece as well. So Alaska, as like some of the national parks, no felt soles. So rubber, you can do Vibram, but you have to have, no felt soles. And the nice thing about Michael tonight is that he's actually offering a pair of wading boots with any pair or a purchase of waders, which is pretty awesome deal. So just keep that in mind. You can get ticketed for that. Some sort of waterproof pack is imperative. I use it as my carry-on, obviously for the airplane, but you need to have something that's waterproof. It rains, you're gonna be in boats, you're gonna be moving around, you just gotta be prepared. It's worth the money. As is quality outerwear. So it rains, it can be cold even in July. I think this is the end of September, this photo, but it gets cold. So you have to invest in good quality stuff. Obviously a camera, gotta have a good camera. And don't be afraid to add a pop of color. So, for anybody that follows me on social media, you guys know, and you'll see probably a lot of photos. I have a lot of color and I'm not afraid of pink. Either is my mom. This is my mom. And I love Fishy Wear is actually an Alaska brand company, women-owned company out of Anchorage. And those are her leggings. And it's fun. So don't be afraid to add a pop of color. So this is definitely, Alaska fishing is not New Zealand, right? So if you can look in this picture, you may not be able to see it, but there is a human in that picture and he's right there. So, when you're fishing New Zealand and some places with snobbier trout, then you may need to really, conceal yourself, but you can have a pop of color in Alaska. And you want to bring a different perspective, okay? So you have to think about this. Now, looking at this fish, this is actually a small rainbow trout in comparison to some of the fish that I've caught. And I think bringing a different perspective, what I mean by that is that all of the fish in Alaska don't compare them to your lower 48 fish. That's just not the right thing to do, right? Every fish is special, but you just want to come and just have a different perspective and shop local. There's a ton of great fly shops. There's Mossy's, there's Mountain View, there's good shops and Worldcast, of course. But you want to just shop, these local small shops. You got to support, buy your gear, buy your stuff, buy all your products from them, and keep them alive because they're allowing us to be able to do this right now. Host these certain type of webinars and whatnot. So you want to eat local, right? So kind of crazy fact here that one salmon is actually over 4,500 calories. And these bears will eat as many as they absolutely can. And you'll see them, they're kind of skinny in June, and then all of a sudden their bellies are just dragging. So eating local, I do eat some of the fish. I tend to catch and release most stuff, but salmon, I'm a sucker for some smoked salmon and or some great fresh fillets. But what you're looking at here, this is actually sea lice on this salmon. So I'm looking for kind of fresh chromed fish that aren't too colored up. So when you're going to be keeping them. Just some of the ladies are filleting some of the fish. And That's not my specialty by any means. I'm good at catching the fish. I'm not good at filleting. I don't know how to do it. But Katie, who was in that prior photo, and then this is Kate Taylor of Frigate Travel. She's a Oregon guide as well as Alaskan. They're just amazing. And it's delicious just to have a shore lunch here. And remember, Alaska is an investment and not an expense. Alaska is definitely one of the most expensive places that it can be, but you can also do some DIY. So if you look at this coffee mate, for some coffee creamer, it's $9.65. And then you look at the cheddar cheese, $15.49. Now, granted, know that a lot of the, this is in Dillingham, so it's going to be a little bit more expensive because it's in some of the smaller areas. All right, so let's talk some transportation. There's all kinds of transportation means within Alaska. Obviously, you can drive, like you saw that picture of Justin Crump. We were in King Salmon, which is a very small area in Bristol Bay. But your main form of transportation is going to be airplanes. So a lot of the lodges that you might go to might be fly-out lodges, or you have to fly into those lodges. You can also, that photo was of an air taxi, so you can hire your own, you can charter your own plane. Now, it's going to cost a little bit of money, but if you know the areas, you can do that. And you can have some exploration missions. So this photo is actually, we're exploring an unknown river that we had never fished before, but we're looking for salmon. And so once you find those salmon, you're also going to find some trout. Also via the jet boat with the motors is another way of transportation. And you can see here, this is actually on the Kvichak. So this is where you have, we flew into it. So there's some John boats there. So then we're preparing. So we're going via jet at that point. Also some drift boats. So this is on the Kenai River. Kenai's, look at that amazing, beautiful aqua water. So we're drifting down from, in certain areas. And the interesting thing about the Kenai is that a lot of the guides will have 3 or 4 anglers in a boat. So it can be a bit interesting trying to cast with everybody in there, but it's definitely doable. And the nice thing about that too is that it actually will help save the cost of your trip. So you can divide it by 3 or 4, which, is nice, especially if you want to do some DIY stuff. And the Kenai is very accessible. You just fly into Anchorage, rent a car, and go down. Here we have some rafts. So you can, a lot of people will fly in their rafts into a certain area and then blow them up at that point, and then they'll go down. I will say that there are a bunch of outfitters out there that will actually have all of the equipment for you, and they'll fly you into a certain area, and then you can, float a river, and then they'll pick you up. So that's a great kind of DIY option as well, but definitely be bear aware with that kind of stuff. Here's just another awesome photo. This is on the Kulik. I was talking to a friend, Matt, a couple days ago, and he was going to go up to the Kulik. Hopefully it'll still happen with the whole COVID stuff. But we were able to fly our rafts in, and then we just fish, and you just go down, and there's plenty of fish to be had. It's amazing. It's so beautiful. Another form of transportation is just maybe a tank. Why not? When in Alaska, you might as well take a tank somewhere. This is up at the Yakutat at Icy Bay Lodge. And it was all coho fishing, and you'll quickly see why I'm in love with silver salmon. And finally, what I think is important is walk and wades, right? So a lot of people, you know, like most of us average people can't afford to spend so much money on, you know, several different lodges every year. So, you know, the nice thing about Alaska is that there is some DIY opportunities. Now, that first photo was us walking into Brooks National Park. We're in Katmai at Brooks River. So you can charter a plane or get a boat ride and go up to Brooks. Or here, this photo is where we're walking into the Kenai River, where some other tributaries come in. And then this is just some of the ladies. You know, we did a DIY trip, and Dallas, who's actually was texting me before, is on watching the presentation. And so she's a local guide down in the Kenai. And then Katie in the back, she is also a local. And so she is like the amazing sockeye fisher. And I have some diagrams and stuff of that I'm going to go through. But there is DIY opportunities. And this photo is just me catching a little jack and just DIY. We walked in. I mean, anybody can do this, you guys, and you can do it pretty inexpensively. Here's just some of the girls as well. Just, you know, it was awesome just to do it ourselves. This is a pretty awesome rainbow of my friend Jen, who Dallas guided her into this fish, and we were just walking, waiting, and pretty awesome fish for just being a bunch of girls and just going out and fishing. It was amazing. Just some of the DIY. This is the Denali National Park. So you hop in a bus and then they'll drop you off and you can go and do some DIY fishing in the park. And don't be afraid to bring in some parachute atoms, because those grayling sure like dry flies, just FYI. And definitely be bear aware. So if you look on the picture on the left, you can see that we are walking in some very tall grass. So making noise, you know, kind of trying to be loud, be in groups. And the picture on the right, if you look closely, those are actually bear paw prints on the door because they were trying to get that moose up above. So somebody actually was sleeping in the cabin that night. So be bear aware. There's just some photos of some just beautiful bears just that I took just right along the river. And this is Brooks. The grain's kind of not amazing, but this is the famous waterfall where all these bears just go, and we're fishing this river. Now, I'm not necessarily afraid to fish the river with these bears because look at what, I mean, they have a lot of substance. You know, I talked about the caloric, you know, intake of these different salmon, but the bears have a lot to eat. So there's never been an actual bear attack in Katmai National Park because the humans are the animals. The bears are the ones that roam free. So we can't carry any food in Katmai National Park. So you have to put all your food into a storage area, and then you have to actually eat in a fenced area. And so, you know, they take it really seriously, and there hasn't been an attack. So I'm not definitely afraid by any means. Okay, let's get to the kind of whole thing about this presentation. So I'm going to quickly go over just amphitheater casting. I'm going to talk about some different fish species, and then you know, there's always going to be some proper fish handling kind of throughout the entire presentation. So this picture here, oh, sorry, I just saw something that said more. So that first picture was just triples, right? So that's not an uncommon thing to have triples. And it's not an uncommon thing that your fish may not fit into your net. So this fish is about 27 inches, it looks like. And this is just right there at Brooks, this huge fish. And river naps. River naps are a must. You're going to be tired from doing all of this workout from fish in Alaska. Okay, I'm not going to go off too much of a tangent here about amphitheater casting, but I do want to say that you want to fish short, right? So if you're fishing anywhere, anywhere in the world that you go, you want to start closest to you. So you as the angler, you are the stage. So you want to first fish and cast to the pit, right? Let it go. Then you want to then cast to row 1, let it fish. Then you want to go row 2, row 3, row 4. So you want to work your way out. And why is that? Because a lot of times, you know, these fish, a lot of fish, anywhere you go, are going to be really close. They like the inside seams. They like that soft water. As you see, you'll see my dad is 6'3", I'm 5'1". And so my dad tends to go too far out, and then I'll stay closer in, and it just works. Also, it's great because you don't have to be the best caster. When I'm spay fishing, I necessarily won't be able to cast as far as other people that I'm fishing with, but I'm still catching fish because I'm starting short and I'm going out. So just give that a try. And it works. Okay, so let's go into some of the different species of fish here. So we're going to first start with salmon. This is actually on the Kenai, and the Kenai has just kind of identification for all of the different types of fish, and I'm going to go through that as well. First, we're going to start with the Chinook, or also known as the king salmon. So this was last year on the Connecticut, also known as the Chosen River. And my dad and I we used our two-handed rods, swinging flies for kings for a week, and it was the most amazing thing I've ever done. Also the hardest thing I've ever done. I couldn't believe how exhausted I was. So sometimes people have a really hard time identifying some of these different types of salmon. So I'm just going to kind of go through how to do that. With this king salmon, so having, you know, there's these black gums here, and they're black at the gums as well as at the base of the teeth. King salmon also have some tail covered spots. They have a really thick caudal or a big, like, back fin tail here. You can see my hand can't even go all the way across it. And really the biggest identifier for a king salmon are going to be these long black spots. So if you're not sure, you see, you know, that's kind of the way to identify these different kings. Now I'm going to classify and put chum salmon in with kings, and the reason I do that is because you're going to fish them in similar types of water. So a lot of things going on with these different chum salmon. So they have a large pupil, no spots. They're going to have some silver streaks on the back of their tail, and then they have a narrow caudal, but still very chrome, and they can get really, really big. Okay, so let's talk about habitat for these certain type of fish. So for Chinook and for chum salmon, or also known as dog salmon, the consistency, they want to have a current with a consistent flow. Now, a lot of times these king salmon can go into pretty deep water. They might be in some buckets, but they have a consistent flow. This is just a classic piece of water here for both kings and for chum. The great thing about this is these are all mostly tundra rivers, and so the walk and wading is really easy. And so it's great for, you know, somebody that is, I'm 40, so somebody that could be younger, 20, or somebody that could be older. It's a really easy way to walk and wade some of these gravel bars. Now there's some certain ways of fishing these type of chum and or kings. Spay, as many of you guys know, that's my first choice. So if I can use my two-handed rod, I definitely will. And then you can also use a single hand streamer, streamer rod also. So let's talk about equipment here. This is a Echo King. So if you look, it's a 9130. So what that means is it's a 9 weight, 13 feet, 0 inches. So a pretty big rod. And this is one of my spay rods. So both king and salmon. So, you know, let's start with kings first. 10 weight single hand rod. These fish are big. You know, the biggest fish that I caught last year was only probably 35, 40 pounds. It kicked my butt. And I thought I was going to break my spay rod. But so you want to have big rods. So 10-foot single hand or 9 to 10 weight spay rods. You definitely want to have some sort of a sink tip. So you type 8, T14. Now this is all dependent upon what area, just like anything, you know, do you add more weight? Do you take off weight? It's all based on the run that you are fishing, okay? So you may have to go with like 15 feet of T22, or you may go lighter, just depends. 20-pound mono. And then for chums, you can still catch them on your king gear, which you probably will, because usually chums are a little bit bitier, so they'll actually kind of take your fly more quickly than kings. But you can use, if you're directly going to be fishing for chums, you want to go like 7 to 9 weight single hand rods or 8 to 9 weight spay rods. Floating lines are great, and you can go a little bit lighter on your tackle, so 12 to 15-pound mono. So we'll talk a little bit about the rigging and the tackle. And flies. So this is Stuart Foxall's flies. He's a designer for Aqua Flies, and he is over in the UK. So we were fortunate to be able to fish with him. And so this is a great color combination. So this is a chartreuse and a kingfisher blue. You can also go with black and blue or chartreuse and white. Those tend to be the best kind of king salmon colors for flies. You know, the salmon space setups, pretty easy. And you guys, if you want some of these rigging diagrams, just message me or email me, or Michael can put my information out there, and I will definitely share this stuff with you, because I know it's a lot to take in, but it just shows, you know, just kind of 3 to 5 feet of mono to your fly, a non-slip loop knot, or if you're using a tube fly, just using the appropriate knot. This is the king salmon single hand setup. So again, a sink tip, and then about 4 feet or so of 20-pound. And chum, pretty much the same, although you're going to be using a floating line, and it's good to have a lead eye fly, and then if you need more weight, obviously do more weight, and then just a longer leader. And I'm not going to get too crazy on, I had some videos on this and I actually deleted them just because I don't think that they're going to work, but I want you to think about your angles, okay? So if you are, for fishing technique, especially for king salmon, is you have to get deep. And the best way to do that is to be able to cast, or you want to cast at a 90-degree angle, and you want to then mend your line and take some steps down. Okay, that's if you're spay or two-handed fishing. Now, if you're anchored out of a boat and you want to then you cast it at 90 degrees, mend, and you're just trying to fish deep, okay? Because that's where those king salmon are. Now, 45-degree angle would be like summer steelhead, right? So you have a floating line, and a 70-degree angle is going to be more for like trout. You're basically thinking about what water level do you want to be in for the fly? What water level do you want your fly to be in, and where are those fish going to be? That's your consideration. Now, this is a video of a 90-degree angle, and I don't think it's probably going to work with our kind of lag. So we can figure out the videos. And mending, again, you want to mend. If you want to get deep, then you have to mend. And then if you take steps down, what that does is it allows you to your fly to get down deep. Now you're not going to have connection with your fly. It might be lost for a little while, you know, a couple seconds or so, but you want that fly to get down deep. That's a video, but so acquisition of depth, you want to get down deep, okay, especially for king salmon. Now chums, you can be up a little bit higher, but definitely for kings. And here's just some fun fish photos. They're big, they're amazing. This is my dad. And you know, it's, oh, I can't, they're just so super special. Chrome, you can see that black kind of gums of them. You know, and these are like baby kings, little jacks, and man, they are all muscle and they fight hard. So don't, you know, again, change your perspective on fishing. The small ones are pretty amazing and will kick your butt too. Just some more pictures here. Here's my dad. Okay, so moving on. Let's talk about some coho. Coho is also known as silver salmon, so we're gonna kind of go through all of that. So how can you differentiate or understand silver salmon? So if you look here, so they're gonna have also a thick caudal, but they don't have any spots on the lower portion of their tail. It's only on the upper, as well as there's a silver kind of color adjacent to that tail there. When you look at the base of their teeth, they're white, and then the edge of their gums are black. And I'm gonna put humpies or pink salmon into with coho, just like I did the chums with the silvers, because they kind of are the same type of water and the same type of flies. So pink salmon, it's gonna have kind of some overall oval spots, kind of, they say it a limp fish, kind of a smaller caudal. They in Alaska, so in Washington there are the odd years, and then in Alaska they're the even years, so every other year. So this year, actually 2020, you could do catch the salmon grand slam. Especially for silver salmon, you're gonna see some acrobats. So be ready. This is kind of like the test of learning how to tarpon fish, or be, you know, when those tarpon jump. So you have to make sure you keep a tight line so these fish jump. So this is, so the habitat. So, you know, unlike silver and or chums that kind of like a consistent flow, a lot of times these silvers are going to be more in slower water. Okay, so you're going to be fishing different types of water. And then this is Mount St. Elias, and it's in the background, just an absolutely beautiful, picturesque area. This is in southeast Alaska in Yakutat, and it's like 19,000 feet, just absolutely amazing. This is my mom. We are fishing some little creek kind of in the Yakutat area. You can see just kind of that slow, sluey water. And obviously we're not afraid of to have a pop of color. Now the different types of techniques for these salmon for coho, you can fish them with a spay rod. It's a little bit harder to catch them with a spay rod because they are in the slower, sluier water, but it can be done. Most common is going to be with a streamer single hand rod. Now, if you look, you can actually see the tip of my rod is broken there. So these fish are strong, and this one broke my rod, but I was able to actually fish with it after. And my favorite way is wogging. Okay, so I love to wog, or any type of top water I'm a sucker for. And coho are very, they like to eat topwater flies. As far as equipment goes, you want to have 7 to 8 weight single hand rods. You can use a sink tip, so anywhere from like a type 3 all the way to T14. Again, all dependent upon the different types of water you're fishing. And then you can use a floating line, especially if you're going to do topwater stuff. You obviously want to use a floating line, and you can get away with some lighter mono, so 12 to 15 pounds. And they like pink. So when in doubt, just choose a different variation or color of pink. As you can see, this is rigging and tackle. It's a pretty big fish. I'm a sucker for glass rods. I love kind of a slower action rod, and coho fishing with glass is pretty fun. So if you haven't tried the Echo Badass glass or any other type of glass rods, oh my gosh, you should definitely give it a whirl. You'd be surprised that you think your rod's going to break and it doesn't. It's really extremely strong. So here's just that silver salmon streamer setup. And again, I'm more than happy to share all of this information with you, but just a sink tip and then a mono leader line or leader. And then here's your WOG setup. So floating line, loop to loop, and then 3 to 5 feet. Throw a WOG on there, some sort of, even do bass poppers is totally doable. This is an awesome video. I wish it would show. I will share this because this is my mom who is just starting to get into fishing, and she does this amazing cast. She does this double hand retrieve. It's awesome. Lands this beautiful coho, and I'll share it. Just I don't think it'll work really with the whole streaming. Has good music. It's pretty awesome. Okay, so this is another video, which I don't think will show. I did share it on Instagram maybe a week or so ago. But if you look at here, so you can see on the far right, there's the river. You can see kind of the current, some seams, some foam. Now, if you look at the left, it's kind of slow, sluey water, and all of those little dots are fish. Okay, so that's just showing like all those salmon to rest. They want to be in that slow water. So basically I'm just with this video I just cast out. And one of the things with silvers is you want to cast far. I say get more real estate. So the further you can cast out, the better, because you have more time for those fish to really look at your fly. And you can do a single hand retrieve, or you can do where you put your rod underneath your arm and you do a double hand. Really what you're looking for is to create a V. Okay, so you want that fly to be coming back towards you, creating this nice V, and those fish are going to go crazy. This is just another video, and I don't think it'll work either. And like I said, I'll post all this stuff. Just creating a V and having those fish come and eat it. All right. So I did this thing called the 12 Days of Wogmas, and just trying to have fun with, you know, just catching silver on topwater. So a wog a day keeps the doctor away. That's a purple mouse. One of my things was I was trying to see which fly I couldn't catch a silver salmon with. So I was trying all these bass poppers and in wog we trust. This I called like the pink bathroom carpet fly. When in doubt, wog it out. This is my dad just walking, and these boots are made for wogging. This is just a bass popper that we bought, and wogging is not a crime. Friends never let friends wog alone. So it's all about just having fun. And as all you guys know, seen me, I'm sure you've seen some dancing photos or whatever. I like to have a good time. This is my mom and dad. Couples that wog together, stay together. I would wog 500 miles. I like this one's pretty awesome photo too. Here I am, wog it like a hurricane. And you down with WOG? Yeah, you know me. So anybody who knows the song OPP, kind of brings me back to what my age group is. And it's like I said, it's all about having fun, right? You have to have fun. Fishing's fun. And so, and in Alaska, you can make it fun because you're going to catch some fish. Now, the final salmon species that I'm going to talk about is sockeye. So sockeye is a huge business in Alaska, and it's not necessarily like to catch them. They don't per se eat fish, but they do swim upstream with their mouths open. So a lot of times people will, they call it lining or flossing fish. So you can use a fly rod, not necessarily like a fly cast, but you can catch these fish on a fly rod. And you know, this last year, the it was like population was so big that they actually kept upping and upping and upping the limits. So it was pretty crowded over kind of in the Kenai Peninsula, but just a chrome sockeye is really, really delicious. And they also, you know, kind of the classic red fish that you see on a lot of the red salmon, you know, you see on a lot of photos and stuff. Those are more than likely sockeye. And so they're kind of humped with a green face and pretty gnarly looking. Now, as I said, the peninsula was pretty crowded, so you're gonna expect crowds, right? So a lot of people are out there, you know, it's kind of, they're just catching the fish, getting their limit, and then moving on. And there's some other animals that are a little opportunistic. So this is a cute little black bear. He was trying to eat our fish. So, I mean, why catch his own when he can eat someone else's that's already caught him, right? Now, as far as equipment goes for these, for the sockeye or the reds, 8 to 10 weight single hand rods, these fish are known to break. Suggest maybe having a spare or a backup just in case. You can use sink tips because you really want to get down to the water column where those fish are. Again, they feed upstream, or they feed with their mouths, or not feed, but I'm sorry, they swim upstream with their mouths open so you can catch them. But you have to be in the right area. You can, or floating lines, split shot, use a swivel. And this is, you're going to use some 30 to 20 pound mono. So these fish are pretty rugged. Now this is a little extreme. This is probably the most complicated rigging diagram that I'm going to show. And this is actually from my friend Katie in Alaska, who's actually stays down on the Kenai, and that's what she does. She catches sockeye. So this is her rig specifically, some tag ends. Basically, you're bouncing your weight on the bottom. You know, if you're, my elbow is my weight, my fly kind of coming like this, bouncing, so you have your fly in the right water column. And usually it's an unweighted fly, could be like a piece of yarn, something. And really you want to read the regulations to make sure that you know what the legal hook size is. That's pretty important. Now you can use either a trilling knot, or you can use a clinch knot, improved clinch, whatever. This is what Katie uses. And honestly, I've only fished for sockeye once. You know, to me, I love the art of casting, so that's my personal preference. But this is just one of her kind of rigs. She's showing the knot she uses, and this is some banana weight, is what she calls it. So you're getting down deep, right? So you're catching fish, and you're eating the fish. You're harvesting these. Now, as far as habitat goes for these different sockeye and reds, they also like moving water because they're moving upstream, but you want to make sure they're going to be kind of in the lanes, but in the inside lanes. So you don't have to be too far out. You can be fairly close, and you're just continually casting and casting. You can see the actual fish coming up and opening up, and you can see them and you fish right to them. Cool. All right. So now let's get into some non-salmon species.
Heather, do you want to take a couple minutes and we'll see if anybody has any questions
totally.
on the salmon specific species?
Yeah.
So I
I hope I'm not I hope it's a lot of
No, it's
information. Sorry, y'all.
it's great. No need to apologize. So I have the chat that's open now, where some folks, if you want to ask some questions about anything pertaining like the salmon fishing specific before we start getting into the rainbow trout or other non-salmon species, shoot
And again,
us a
Michael,
question there.
and then again, Michael, I'll share. I can do like a PDF or something of the rigging diagrams that you can share.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because I know that's so much information, and I mean that's a whole nother class in itself is just learning to rig everything. So
So let's see if anybody has any questions before we move forward here. So yeah, you're welcome to ask any questions in the chat function. If not, okay. So here's a question: Are you able to bring your own jet boat to most of these rivers you were talking about in fishing
good.
those areas?
Well, that's an interesting. It depends on where you live and where your boat is. I mean, you could like like if you were going to drive up the highway to drive to Alaska, then I would check and see. Obviously, you'd have to be registered. If you live in Alaska, though, I don't see why. I mean, you have to obviously look at the regulations as far as bringing it down to the Kenai. But I know that there are a lot of guides that live in Anchorage and drive their boats down to like the Kenai River and some of the others in that area. Now, a lot of the salmon boats that I'm the salmon areas that I'm talking about, like Quinnahock and some of the other areas, Yakutat, it's so remote that you have to fly in on small planes. So those boats are already there. So most places are so remote that that boats are already there. There are some areas that you can rent a boat. So it's all kind of specific to where you are.
Gotcha. I have a question. If there's a salmon species for like the first time angler to Alaska that they're looking to target that that offers action, bringing to hand, and the entire sort of learning process of being able to target salmon with a fly rod, which one would you suggest?
Coho, 100%. Silver salmon. They're the most fun. They eat flies. If they don't eat your pink fly, you just change variations or colors or different shades of pink, or you throw on a black or whatever. And they eat topwater. So it's really fun and a great way to fish, like especially for bass, like you're learning how to fish topwater, how to land them. They fight hard, 100% silvers.
And the other question I have is it always cold there? Because it looks like you
No.
always have a rain jacket on.
No, it's not. I mean, I've actually wet waded there. But you have to be cautious of the bugs. So a lot of times, if you have good technical apparel, it breathes really well. So you're never hot, but you can stay warm. But it's not always cold. No, it can be sunny and beautiful there as well. And I have wet waded before. So,
Cool.
yeah.
If you're heading to Southeast Alaska, what's the easiest fish to target, like on the DIY scale?
Steelhead.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then last question we've got here is, have you found yourself in pretty long stints from hook set to fish to hand with salmon?
Absolutely. Kings, especially, when I'm targeting them on a two-handed rod, they're the first day I didn't even catch one. So yeah, for sure. It's this isn't like every single, cast you're gonna catch a fish. But your odds are really good to catch one, so you just keep going, you keep thinking, okay, that next cast is going to be it. But there are days that if you're targeting a specific fish, you may catch bycatch, but you may not catch the fish you're looking for, right? So it's not always an arm workout.
Yeah, and for all of our attendees out there, you have to remember too, salmon are andronymous, right? So they're not like a rainbow trout or a brown trout or a cutthroat trout that we know in our local area that lives behind the rock below the bridge on the river left-hand bank during high flows or something like that. These fish in their life cycles are going from, they're hatched, rearing stream, ocean, and then back to that rearing stream. So there's some pretty big gaps in the time periods of where they're present in those river systems.
Absolutely. And tides is another thing that I didn't really talk about, but looking at the tides and knowing when fresh fish are going to be coming in and being at the right location when those fresh fish come in. So you have to think, okay, I have high tide at this time. I should be about a mile from the mouth of the ocean to the river, and I know that those fish are going to come in. So there's a lot to it, and just being at the right place at the right time, knowing the buckets, kind of where they are, where they might be. Yeah, it's fishing, it's not catching. So, but Alaska, you have a lot of opportunities for catching. And, I'm a steelheader in the Pacific Northwest, and I don't catch a lot of steelhead on my two-handed rod. But when I go to Alaska, every cast could be that one. And I have that feeling, And
Totally.
so it's totally worth going and exploring a two-handed rod. There is nothing like catching fish on. That's my own opinion, but that's how I feel.
So if you're going after the salmon Grand Slam, what's the best time of year in Alaska to try to do that?
Early July.
Early July.
Yeah, because you're gonna have your kings are gonna be coming in June. You're depending on your area. Like if it's in southwestern Alaska, let's say, there's like the Talk. You can definitely do a Grand Slam there, but early July would be the best because chum and kings come in, then chums are going to be slightly later, but still in the same time. You'll have sockeyes, and silvers will be kind of the latter part. So yeah, July is a good month to get your whole Grand Slam.
And do you have a minimum number of days for a trip, like on a DIY scale, to allocate if you're trying to do that?
You at least 3 probably. If you want to catch, especially in one day, if you're going to try to do that. Now, DIY, it's not necessarily possible on the Talk just because you have to fly into native villages and then have boats and do all of that. But it can't. At least a couple days. You have to have at least 2 to 3 days for sure. And you're fishing different water. So once you catch one fish, you have to move on, right? Because obviously silvers aren't necessarily going to be where kings are. So you have to fish different types of water or different runs, to catch that specific species that you're looking for.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all we got for the Q&A. So let's move with the non-salmon species.
Okay. And is my time or slide stuff okay?
Totally. Go for it.
I'm trying to slow down and trying to do it. So cool. All right, let's go with some non-salmon species. There's 2 type of anglers, and 3 types. Some just want salmon. Some want rainbow trout or leopard rainbow trout, like you see here, and some want them both. And I'm kind of into that latter category. This is a rainbow trout, leopard rainbow. So you can see just these leopard spots. And this photo has not been altered. This is how beautiful these fish are. They're so amazing. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you have lake rainbows. So they're huge. They can be very large, as this one is. Some people think this is a rainbow or a steelhead. It's not. It's a rainbow trout, came out of a lake. Usually tend to be more chrome because they've been in that lake, and they come into the rivers to spawn. So that's when, and there's certain times that you go or not to spawn, I'm sorry, they come into the rivers to eat, because a lot of times all of those salmon are coming up, and so they want to eat on the flesh. They want to eat on all of the eggs that the salmon are laying. So this is another lake run rainbow, and what's so funny is this is a really big fish. It may look like it. I think it was like I think that got me into, that might've been like 27 to 29 inches. And that other one obviously was much larger. But this is a beautiful chromed lake fish as well. Grayling, this picture's kind of gone around. These grayling are just absolutely beautiful. They have these gorgeous spots. Kind of the identifying factor of the grayling are the dorsal fin. It just has these like stripes. Oh, they're just absolutely beautiful. And you'll see a lot of photos of people holding the dorsal fin out of the water. Well, look at how gorgeous they look in the water. It's just amazing to see them in their natural habitat, their, you know, that natural presentation. So you have some Dolly Varden. So a lot of, you can think of a dolly as, there's two types. So bull trout, let's say. So bull trouts do not go to the ocean and come back. A Dolly Varden will come to the ocean and come back. This is early season dollies. Sometimes, or in the fall, they tend to get a little more colored, and they have this beautiful lipstick. I should have, I caught a really gorgeous one in Russia this year, like just this beautiful lipstick. They just get so, they're so pretty. So this is a char. This was in September. So the char, you know, the closer you get to the ocean are a little more chrome, less colored. This is later in the season and further away from the ocean. So just these, look at how beautiful the white tips are of these fish. They're fun. They'll eat stripped flies, also eat beads, and we'll talk about that as well.
They look pretty similar.
They do. Yep. So I'll go back. You know, there, and I couldn't tell you the exact, like, there's certain genes or whatnot, but you can tell the difference of the two when you've caught them. And I don't know if it's like the number of anal fin, you know, all this stuff, but yeah, they're pretty close. Anybody that's gone to Russia or have seen kunja. So a kunja is a Asian white spotted char. So you'll see, and they're in this char family. And pike, of course. Who doesn't like to catch pike? This guy I actually caught on a mouse, which was pretty rad. Yeah, just lots of fun. And look at all those bugs. You can see all the bugs around me. The Alaska state bird. Okay, so equipment's actually a lot easier for the non-salmon species. So, you know, you can get away with a 6 to 8 weight single hand rod. You can also use double hand, but we'll just go with the single hand for now. You can do sink tips, you can do floating line, you can use split shot, or you could use more dumbbell flies, obviously, to get weighted down, and then 8 to 15 pound mono about. So I'm just going to go through the different types of fishing techniques. Now, the one thing I want to talk about before I start with fishing techniques is that obviously salmon is life. So if you look at this photo, I see 3 rainbow trout just right away. Far left corner, there's one, and then there's 2 in between those 2 sockeye. Now, what happens is these fish, you know, they at first they start kind of feeding early season on mice, and then they start to hone in on other things, right? It's like us with trout fishing, you know, early season it's BWOs, then it's March Browns, and then it's squallas, right? These fish tend to hone in on different what they're eating, what's available. And so you can catch fish on mice early, but then as these salmon start to come up from the ocean and go up to spawn, then these fish are going to be following the salmon, all of them, grayling, rainbows, dollies, char, and they're going to follow. So they're going to eat a lot of those salmon eggs. They're going to eat flesh. So as those salmon decay, you know, some of their flesh is coming down. So they're going to eat some of that stuff. So salmon 100% is life. Now, as I mentioned, mice. Who doesn't like topwater? I'm a sucker, obviously, for wogging or poppers. give me a mouse, oh man, it's amazing. So this is earlier season. Now that's not to say that you can't try later season. You might find some willing participants, but definitely earlier season, like June-ish, prior to, you know, those flesh flies and all of the eggs. Now here is a gorgeous leopard rainbow trout caught on a mouse. And you can see, if you look at the mouse, all the indents from all the teeth. We definitely had it was a fun day, let's just say. Here's just another photo of this is actually a steelhead bomber. And so we are using some steelhead topwater early season summer steelhead flies. And these fish, just if you fish them right and you can swing them correctly, oh, those fish will go crazy. Now, when you're mouse fishing, if you want to do some DIY, or if you're gonna, a lot of times what we did was we get out of our boat and then we go and hike up a river. So obviously being bear aware is very important, but also this is the time that you probably want to blend in a little more. Unlike I love color, but I actually was more, I thought about it a little bit more. So just trying to blend in. Obviously, we know this from other like trout fishing in the lower 48s, but watch your shadows. Think about your casting, think about the sun, you know, all of these thoughts. Because if you look here, this is a spring creek that we flew a plane into and hiked into like 5 miles. You know, obviously we can see the fish, they can see us. So stealth mode, luckily for me, I'm only 5'1", so I don't have to bend down as far, let's say, as my dad, who's 6'3", but just thinking about that, women wearing bright, you know, rings or jewelry, I know it sounds crazy, but you just have to be a little mindful of that. And here's just a small spring creek. This almost looks like, you know, some stuff in Idaho, you know, like almost, you could be the Teton River in your area, Michael. You know, it's small.
Yeah, or it looks identical to Flat Creek in the National Elk Refuge right in Jackson.
Yeah, I've never fished that. So yeah, and this is Alaska, you know. So just being mindful of the fish's angle, you know, and what fish see when you're fishing these type of areas. And you can catch some pretty nice fish. Like this guy, the water was so, like I'm bending down, right? So it's about 1.5 feet of water. This fish is so big. As soon as I saw him come up to the fly, like you could see his wake, his belly's just dragging, and they want to eat, you know? So if they can get a mouse, oh man, they're on it. So mouse setup, similar to a wog setup, you want to have a floating line. And this is when you have a short leader, just straight up mono, 3 to 5 feet. You could do anywhere again from 8 to 15 pound tests, depending on how big of a fish you're going to be fishing for. You want to think about the how big of, obviously, mono if you get caught in trees, because this is where you're casting, you know, right to the shore, right to the banks, right over logs. So obviously if it's too heavy of tippet or too heavy of mono, you may break things. So just be mindful of that. Here's a video, mouse techniques. Obviously I don't think we'll be able to use it, but again, I can show it later. You know, there's different ways to do your fishing for mice. So when you're casting, a lot of times what I like to do, and especially with streamers, if I'm walking wading or mousing, I'll cast downstream and I just kind of at an angle across the river, and then I just let it kind of skate through, kind of creating that V as it's going. And I do that with streamers too. A lot of times if I'm walking wading, I'll cast downstream, strip, cast downstream, strip. And you can do the same thing for mice. You can do a single hand retrieve for mousing, or you can do a double hand. So lots of different ways of being able to bring your fly back to you, and test out all of the ways. You know, it's like every day can be so different how the fish want this, the fly presented to them. I don't know, you probably can't. Can you see that, Michael?
I cannot, no.
No worries. Okay, cool. So that's mousing. Again, more earlier season, and you can just cast downstream, just let it go. And you wanna, I always say, if you're not flirting with danger, you're not catching fish. So you wanna cast right over those logs and really kind of bring those big predatorial fish out. Cool, so let's talk about some flesh flies. As I said before, that as those salmon start to come up river, they're starting to spawn. So unlike steelhead that can come up river, they spawn and they can go back to the ocean, or they can stay in the river. Salmon, for those that don't know, will come up, they spawn, they lay their eggs, and then they die. Now, with that, what they do is obviously the fish are going to decay some, or a lot, and so you're going to have chunks of flesh that kind of swim or kind of float down the stream. Now, think about flesh flies, or flesh obviously is dead, so it doesn't move. So when we're fishing for flesh flies, you want to fish them more at a dead drift presentation. So, or you can swing your flesh flies as well. Now here's just a basic streamer setup for these flesh flies. And again, I can, I'll share this rigging diagram with everybody. And dead drift or on the swing. So a flesh fly, it's dead. It's not a predator. It's not like a aquatic bait fish. It's not going to move around. So you want to just dead drift it. So you can cast, you know, like 2 feet in front of you, high stick it, and kind of dead drift it that way. You can put it under an indicator, and you can kind of keep it mending, keep it on a nice dead drift, or you can swing it again, just with a single hand or a 2-handed rod. This is a beautiful Kwijak chrome fish. Like, look at how just like it's just its fins are iridescent. It's just absolutely beautiful. And these fish fight and they jump. This is a dead drift fish from the Kenai. Just amazing. And actually, that was the first time I'd ever put a streamer under an indicator, and lo and behold, it works really well. This is kind of interesting. So yesterday on United Women on the Fly on Instagram, I just, asked a poll, a question, who else dead drift streamers? So out of everybody, 91% of people answered that they dead drift streamers. So that's pretty cool, to see that that technique is very useful and people do it a lot.
That's many more than expected.
Total. I was shocked, actually, because most people think, oh, I'm going to be fishing a streamer as a predatorial, bait fish, right? Or I'm fishing towards a predator. And so they're going to be stripping in, you do a fast strip, slow strip, whatever. Yeah. So I was actually quite surprised by that. And 499 people saw that story on United Women on the Fly. So that's a pretty significant, that's a good polling, of people. So
yeah, that's another arrow for the quiver for individuals that don't do it, because obviously there's enough people out there that are having angling success in that technique.
For sure. I went to Spain a couple of years ago. I ran this race, and I ended up road tripping with this guy that I met on Facebook. And it ended up being that he was the world champion Euro nympher, right? For Chile and for Spain. And so I learned so much from him. And what was really interesting is he taught me, we were literally 2 feet away from these huge browns, and I just dead drifted and like high sticked these streamers, and it was so successful. So if you can sneak up on them and just oh man, it was really, really effective. So for anybody listening or watching, try it, dead drift it, get close and try it. So, cool. All right. Now got beads. This is kind of, we're going to be matching the hatch. So, this is like thinking about wanting to throw a size 22 midge when the squallas are out, right? So, you know, for different egg patterns or beads, this is what you do in Alaska. Now, or it's a very effective way, how's that, in Alaska to fish. Here's just a picture of a dolly, obviously reiterating the fact that they do eat all of these different eggs. And not all beads are created equal. So, you know, it's as you know, anglers, we think a lot of times about the different entomology, let's say, of bugs, right? So we think of the different stages. Well, the same thing goes with eggs. You know, is it a fresh egg? Is it an old egg? You know, so there's different colors, there's different places that have an egg sac, you know, the sacs and all of this different stuff on these beads. It can be very, very specific. So you just basically want to just understand the food source, right? That the fish eat these eggs. Now, kind of a single bead rig, pretty easy to set up. It's just like a basic nymph rig, basically. So you can have you want to have a strike indicator. Now you can fish, I call it fishing it naked, where you could almost Euro nymph a bead. But you want to have your double surgeon knot, and then have where you put your weight, and then you have your bead, right? And obviously, your different length for where your indicator is going to be is all based on the type of water, the run that you're fishing. Now, you can get kind of technical with bead fishing. You can sight fish for bead, you know, different types of fish, and really high stick it and be connected and want to fish or catch this specific fish. So you can kind of up your game with indicator bead fishing for sure. And you can catch some really amazing fish. You're going to just see some photos of, you know, this is what the fish are eating. This is what's available. This is the nutrients, you know. Kind of an interesting fact that I read today was that 1 ounce of salmon roe contains 6 grams of protein, 1.8 grams of fat, 0.0 grams of carbs. So these fish are getting a lot of nutrients and they know what they need. So this is a dolly. Michael, remember how you said that they look, you know, fairly similar? So this is a dolly Varden. Later in the season, that's going to be a little more kind of colored up. So you can look at the bottom fins, how they're less orange. And then the spots are kind of like a pinkish salmon color with the turquoise around it. So really, really beautiful. They kind of have their clown suit on, is what we like to say. And this fish, this is at Brooks River, kind of unexpected. I was not expecting to catch this big of a fish on a bead in this river. Like it was, oh, amazing. Just another big dolly. And as far as beads go, you can, you know, there's certain bead knots that you can use, or you can peg a bead. It's all dependent upon kind of what you have, what equipment you have, and then also what you're comfortable with. So, and again, as far as techniques for using these beads, it's just going to be a dead drift. So you can high stick it, put on a dead drift. You can swing it through. So you can fish them on a dead drift, and then at the very end of your fishing, you know, kind of drift, you can then swing that bead through, as well as you can sight fish. So you can again be very, very kind of technical, truly, with bead fishing. Now, with bead fishing, with a lot of these, you might have some weight, you might have bigger flies. If you're going to be fishing, you know, those mice or big streamers, open loops, right? So thinking about how are you casting? You don't want these tight, narrow, beautiful loops. You want to open it up. So I like to say, we call it a casting arc. So like your YMCA. So open up your Y. That's all you gotta do to open up your loop. Okay, so let's talk about now my favorite type of fishing is gonna be some two-handed fishing. And I'm getting close to being done. Now, if you look at this photo, not all are created equal, right? And so Eric actually looks a lot really tall. My dad's actually 6'3" and Eric's what, like 5'10" or something. I'm 5'1". So why I show this picture is because height sometimes matters as far as fishing, especially with your spay rod, because you might have to wade out deeper. And so for me, I just can't reach some spots. You can see just how long of our spay rods are. And that's called two-handed love right there. Now, this is a big, beautiful fish. And as you can see, that is a green, it's like a Willie Nelson is what they call it, fly. It's a black leech, a green head, and then we added a bead. So everything in Alaska, a bead before it is not a bad thing. If you look a lot at like the Dalai Lamas that are a very famous Alaska fly, a lot of them are fished with a bead. You'll see that they're actually made, or you can buy them with beads as well. So now the trout spay setup, super easy, just like your king salmon setup. So you're gonna have your line, some sort of tips, and then 3 to 5 feet of mono, and then a non-slip loop knot. If you use a tube fly, then obviously you'll use your appropriate knot for that. Now, you won't be able to watch this, but the one thing I'll say with spay fishing is watch your D-loops, and that's what helps me the most, is when I'm casting, I'm gonna just watch my D-loop, and then I'm gonna get the best cast. So for those anglers that are just learning how to two-hand fish, really, people watch their back loop when they're casting a single hand rod. I think watching your D-loop when you are casting a double hand will tremendously help you out. And this is just going to be some incredible fish photos. I just can't say enough about these fish. Like for me, when I'm fishing for in Bristol Bay in this area for a big rainbow trout, I just know every single cast could be this fish. Obviously not very happy at all.
How could you not be?
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And this one, it's interesting. This did not make the 30-inch mark. You see a lot of people or you hear people be like, oh yeah, my trout was 30 inches. Well, if you look at this photo, you'd be like, oh my God, that fish is 60 inches, right? And it's actually 29.5 inches, like taped.
Pretty close to 30.
Yeah,
It doesn't really matter.
It puts it into perspective, like that's why I say you have to have a different perspective, and you can't compare your trout to a lower 48 trout, right? Your Alaska trout and your lower 48, totally different. Another beautiful fish. The fish gods were really good at this at this time. So this is awesome. This is the biggest rainbow trout, or the biggest trout I've ever caught on my spay rod. And literally this fish chased me down like 300 yards into my backing twice. I fell, so Ryan had to like pick me up and like carry me down. And I didn't measure this fish because the boat was too far, but if you look, so the fish up above was measured at 31.5 inches and 17 inches around. This other fish by far was way bigger. I don't know how big it was, but man, it oh my gosh, so amazing. So
and
amazing.
It's a trout, not a steelhead.
That's a trout, not a steelhead. And what's interesting is, there was that question about with salmon, are you going to catch a fish every single cast? Now, these big trophy fish, you're not catching one every cast. You're going to be catching maybe like a 30-inch trout is so hard to catch, even in Alaska, you know? And so knowing that as you go in, but I mean, we probably hooked maybe bigger fish and could be a little bit less than 30 inches, but maybe 2 to 5 a day. So, you know, and we're fishing all day, we're casting, like this isn't just a give me by any means. It's hard. And this river especially is a hard river to fish. Big, deep water, bouldery, like it's a hard wade. But like that fish in my hand is 100% worth every, you know, time I fell or what, you know. And that's it. That's what I got. So again, you know, just life is a journey, not a destination. So you have to just get out there, you have to practice, you have to, you know, obviously have that anticipation and that confidence that that next cast is going to be that trophy trout. And they're out there, and you know, especially in Alaska, you can do some DIY stuff and catch that trophy trout. So yeah, what other questions or what can I answer?
I want to go tomorrow.
I know, me too. You know, I have 3 trips planned this year. And, you know, right now Alaska has a 14-day quarantine. So I don't know. And obviously with my real job, there's just no way that I'll be able to do that 3 times. So I'm hoping that that's lifted. But, you know, it's what it is right now. So we'll see. But yeah, Alaska is amazing. For anybody that hasn't been there, you have to put it on your bucket list, you know, and you can do it inexpensively, you know, and I have a lot other travel tips and ways of saving money, that if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to share, you know, all of my like ways of being a fish bum, basically.
100%. We all need those.
I know. Yeah.
It'll be interesting this coming summer or into like our prime angling season, looking at these things where I think we're going to see a big concentration on people looking at their backyards and looking at a lot of domestic travel options. And Alaska is one of those options for people to go to where it's not completely foreign. You're not dealing with a foreign language. You're dealing with techniques and tactics that are very similar to what you would, you know, use in the Pacific Northwest with a 2-handed rod, or here, you know, with nymphing or swinging streamers or stuff like that, where if there's ever a silver lining in this whole cloud of whatever we're going through, maybe that's a good one, where it's forcing us to look back on the things that we have like right at our disposal.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, and all these techniques you can use in your backyard. It's not, you know, I can use them on the Spokane River or wherever I'm at, you know, and yeah, it's just another way, you know. And if it's DIY, I think you can do some of that. But you fishing your local ditches, you know, looking around and seeing, you know, for you where things can be, maybe a pond, you know, throw one of those bass poppers and try like a single hand retrieve or a double hand retrieve, and just practicing that, you know. It's just getting out there and just putting the time on the water is the most important thing.
Totally. Okay, so here's a question. What's the best time for steelhead in Alaska?
So it depends on where you're at. So like in southeastern Alaska, they're going to be, you can do some springtime. So May can be a really good time of year. Or if you want to go like southwestern Alaska, you can do fall as well. So a lot of times people, you know, if a lot of these pictures, I go in the fall. I love the fall because I love those big rainbows. But if you can do both, you can do steelhead plus you can do big rainbows in the fall. So it's all dependent upon when you want to go, like steelhead salmon, you know. And what's interesting is the coho salmon in Southeast Alaska is late September. So it's all dependent upon like what you have. So May or the fall is a great time for steelhead.
So let's parlay on that question a little bit more. You know, it seems like there's some really good combos on fish species where, you know, where you can go at different times. Are there any like combos that you would suggest or highlight?
Well, obviously the Salmon Grand Slam in July would be a great
Hmm.
time for southwestern Alaska. But fall for sure. I mean, you can catch like those clown suited dollies, you know, you can catch the beautiful char, grayling, and big trout, and even, you know, September, early September, you can still catch silver salmon in king salmon that are still chrome. And so early September is a really good time as well. Like really, really good time.
We had an attendee just said, "Cool, so fall in Alaska is now on my bucket list." That was so fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. For sure. And I am happen to be hosting a couple of trips maybe this year, one in July, Alaska West for the salmon species. And then with Kate and Justin up in King Salmon in September as well. So if
Very cool.
interested, let me know. Yeah.
Is there a best time for Dolly Vardens? And if so, what weight rod or
Yeah.
locations, regions that would you look at?
You know, I love color, obviously. Look at that picture, pops of color. So to me, I would rather catch like a beautiful clown dolly. So later is better. So September. As far as weight wise, so 5 or 6 weights, 6 weight probably more important, a little bit heavier, because you might catch something else. Like that's the thing, is there's a lot of bycatch in here. So having, you know, 6 weight rod, and then you can catch beautiful dollies if you flew into Alaska Anchorage and then you went down to the Kenai. There's beautiful fish there too, and you can do DIY. So bring your rod. Anytime you're traveling, you should be bringing your fly rod, and for that potential. So the Kenai Peninsula is an amazing, very obtainable place for anglers.
Cool. Okay, so here's a two-handed question from another short person. Do
Yes.
you have any techniques or tips on spay line management? When I'm in deeper water, I struggle with having more line out than my taller friends do.
That is a great question. I have a video that I should share with you, but and I will. So message me or connect with me, and I'll share a video of my management. But a quick little story. When I went to on the Connect Talk, people that two-hand fish, like I think of it as how many pulls I can get of line, right? And when I first started on the Connect Talk, I was at 7 pulls. So I don't even know how far that was. But at the end, I was at 16 pulls. That's a ton of running line. So
Wow.
what I do is I will, as I'm bringing my line back to me in order to cast, I will take like 3 pulls and then I hold it with my pointer finger. I then take 3 pulls and then I hold it with my middle finger. So I'm creating these big loops. And so that way I can hold them at the bottom of the rod. And then as soon as I'm ready, my D loop's going, and I can cast, I stop, and then I cast them out as I come up. And, you know, as a shorter person too, or vertically challenged, you have to sweep higher, right? So that's a big part of it too. So as you come down, you place your anchor wherever it may be. You have to lift yourself and your rod, and you have to come across on a much higher plane. So you want to, as a vertically challenged person, you have to lift higher. So on that plane, that's like the number one piece of advice.
Are you do you
And
hold
I
your
know
coils in your top hand or bottom hand?
my bottom. I hold
Okay.
them on the butt of the rod. Yep. And then just like single hand casting, when you stop, so at your stop is when you then let your line slip. The same thing goes for a spay and double hand too. So when I come around, I create my D loop and I go forward. As soon as I go forward, I stop and then I let my line out. So it's the same principle as a single hand casting as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Um, any other questions out there from any of our attendees? You can type them in the Q&A or the chat feature. There's another one. What do you have any favorite Arctic char places in Alaska?
Yeah, one of the that there's this picture. It's the Ugashik Narrows. But there's this beautiful volcano mountain, and it's just absolutely picturesque. Now, when you get into King Salmon, it's the only way to get there is via flight, so you'd have to charter a plane, and that is Alaska style, is planes. But Ugashik Narrows for sure for big, beautiful char. So, and that's obtainable. Anybody can go get an air taxi. As crazy as it sounds, anybody can do that and fly into Ugashik. It obviously costs some money to get a plane ride over there, but my dad actually caught a 32-incher over there. So there's some really big, beautiful fish at Ugashik. And it's it's in Bristol Bay. It's out of King Salmon. It's amazing.
Very cool. Like I said, I want to go tomorrow.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And you're always, if you allow yourself, you can always go somewhere different. I think that's the beautiful thing of it too, is there's so much to see and do.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of diversity in the fishing, especially when you start looking at the water types and the habitat pieces of, you know, king salmon, that are in these deeper holes, and then you've got fast water applications, and then you've got swinging tactics. It's sort of like you get to do it all.
For sure. And like thinking about entomology on different eggs, right? Like there's so much to it. You can just, you're always learning with fly fishing. I think that's the fun of it. Like you can be an expert at one thing, but there's so much to learn and to experience.
Yeah, totally. Joy's in the journey, right?
Yeah, yes, that's the joy is in the journey for sure. I will say too, for any ladies out there, if you have any questions about, obviously Michael's giving a really amazing deal, but if you guys have any questions about any of the Sims women's apparel, I've worn it all, I've product tested it all. So let me know, and I'm more than happy to kind of give you the yay and nay about all the pieces and what I think is the best bang for your buck, and as far as versatility and all that stuff goes too.
Totally. I'll include your email as well as your Instagram handle and other information in the email follow-up, where other individuals can watch the webinar later on YouTube, as well as the promos. So for all you attendees that are still with us, you can contact Heather via email or via social media or any of those types of things with any of those questions. We don't really have any more questions coming in, so
we'll say thank you to all those. It looks like there's still 42 people watching, so
yeah.
Thanks for hanging out and listening to my long-windedness. I could get so uber nerdy, but I really appreciate those that were able to stick it through, and hopefully y'all learned something. So
well, thank you, Heather, for taking time out of your day to put this presentation together and show it to all of us. I know we're all inspired now to go to Alaska. As I said, I'm ready to go tomorrow if I could and stay there all summer and catch everything possible. So
it's mega.
You guys have some fishing and some hanging out to do, for your fisheries just opened in Washington, right?
Yeah, yesterday.
Exactly. So you guys have some fun to be had. So we'll let you go, and if we have any other questions, we'll contact you. So once again, thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Totally. So, well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. This is our last webinar from the spring, but don't despair. We're going to continue our webinar series through the rest of the year. But if you need anything else from World Cast Anglers, you're welcome to email me. I'm going to send out that email in the next couple of days with the webinar that you can take a look at. So don't hesitate to contact us or contact Heather with anything that you need in the fly fishing realm. And we hope everybody has a great evening.
Good night.
Thanks, Heather.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, bye.